this morning. Now, he is the attorney that's making headlines this morning because he's representing the estate of Gloria Satterfield, that's the former housekeeper of Alec Murdaugh.
Bland is responding to Murdaugh, admitting to more lies regarding a federal lawsuit. An insurance company is suing Murdaugh, claiming that he stole millions of dollars meant for Satterfield's family.
And Attorney Bland claims the money the insurance company Nautilus paid wasn't received by his clients. We're also learning this, Bland releasing a statement saying in part, quote, "Seems there is buzz because liar Alec now says he allegedly made up the story that Gloria Satterfield didn't fall down Moselle stairs by his dogs. Since when did Alec become the modicum of honesty and credibility? This is nothing but noise, just gutless people trying to continue to victimize Gloria's siblings and children."
Well, Gloria Satterfield died at the Murdaugh home after a fall back in 2018. Last month, Murdaugh filed for an extension to respond to the lawsuit, saying being in prison affected his ability to take part in the case. Murdaugh is currently serving life for killing his wife and son. This week, Murdaugh answered the lawsuit, saying that he lied about some of the details and the day of Satterfield's death, including that the family's dogs caused it. He also says Satterfield was not working that day, all to support a wrongful death lawsuit so that there could be a payout. Murdaugh admits to making false statements to Nautilus, the insurance company, that he, quote, misused vulnerable persons who trusted him. Murdaugh also admits that the money from the settlement went to an account that he owned rather than the Satterfield family. One of the things that Murdaugh is denying is the allegations that he co-conspired with anyone else to get that money. He is currently facing nearly 100 other criminal charges, mainly related to financial crimes. We do have a breakdown of his entire response on our website, foxcarolina.com.